Ask not what we all be can do for you. Ask what you can do for we all be.
Going back to that caller, we got another caller. 985, you are on the air. Welcome to We All Be.
Hi, this is Watika Tillman calling in.
Thank you, Sister Tillman, for calling in.
Hey, Ron, let me introduce Watika. I'm glad Watika called in.
Okay, go ahead.
Watika is the mother of 14-year-old Cameron Tillman, who was killed by police in Homer, Louisiana, just a little more than 2 months ago. I'm glad to hear Watika called in. God bless you, Watika. How you doing, sister?
Hey, Mr. Brown. I'm fine. I just left the Capitol building to rally today.
Fantastic. So, Ron, I'm glad I got her to call in on your show, Ron. This is the mother of that 14-year-old kid, honor student, who was just killed 2 months ago.
I'm off my condolences, sister, for what happened to your son. That's very unfortunate.
Thank you so much.
So what can we do?
Unfortunate. Thanks for your condolences.
Yeah, I mean, what can we do now?
What we can do now is get the story out there and help just go to these rallies and go to these legislative meetings and interrupt their meetings and get our story heard. That's a start, you know, and show them that this time around that we're serious. Like, enough is enough. You know, get out there, be seen, and just don't stop with 1 or 2 rallies. Do it every day. If you're the only person that's standing there alone with your poster, fine, but don't let it be just 1, 2, 3, 4 times.
Well, Ron, why don't you allow Watika, we had a few minutes, to tell what happened to her son, for those who...
Yeah, please, Sister Tillman, tell us.
Watika, go ahead and tell them what happened back on that fatal day in February, just 2 more months ago.
Back September 23rd, my son Cameron was shot and killed by a Sheriff's Office deputy. Cameron was opening up the door because he thought it was his female friend. They were playing in an abandoned house. You know, they've been playing there for the past 2 years as a hangout, you know, after school. What happened was a neighbor, a white neighbor, she incited a race riot, as a matter of fact, a day later. But long story short, she made a false police call saying she seen like a group of black boys walking with a BB gun.
Mm-hmm.
And the officer who was in the area, he parked at her house. You know, him along with another officer walked to that house. Now, granted, and the police call, they never even mentioned the house, okay? All she said was walking down the street. They never mentioned this house. This officer patrolled this area like almost every day. My son opened the door. He was shot immediately twice. He was shot so close that he had skin burns. My son, Andre, my older son, hurried up and closed the door. And this officer shot through the door 2 more times.
Wow.
My son told Cameron to hurry up and fall and play dead, but Cameron, he went in shock. So my son threw Cameron on the floor and hovered over him. Cameron lived 45 minutes without no medical help. At this time, you had witnesses, of course, was there. It was broad daylight. The 2 officers was outside arguing. They panicked. They left Cameron in there shot, went down the street to get their police units, and drove back up to the house. Still no 911 call. 911 wasn't called until 5:44 p.m. Cameron was shot at 5:19 p.m. He died around almost 6 o'clock. My son seen him take his last breath.
And Ron, let me say this about Cameron. Well, let me say this about Cameron. Cameron was an honor student. Cameron was an exceptional athlete who actually decided to tell his mom this year that he was going to drop out of football so he can focus on his studies because his classes are going to be a little bit harder this year. So he had a 14-year-old kid who was shot by police. And to add insult to injury, this neighbor who had called had said that a group of men had walked in with guns. So she didn't distinguish that it was a BB gun. So when police got there, they assumed that there was people in there with weapons. But the problem with the police is they didn't identify themselves. They knocked on the door, and as soon as Cameron opened the door, they shot him. And then the BB gun that people are talking about was actually in the back of the house on a table, I think in the kitchen somewhere. Am I right, Watika?
Yes, it was way in the back kitchen, a raggedy 1970s type broken BB gun.
But what they tried to do initially, right after Cameron was shot, is they took that BB gun and they placed it near his body. The cover-up started to try to happen immediately, where they tried to say that was a weapon. So when they told the white mainstream media the next day that he had a gun, they had guns, and that they were in this house burglarizing a house. Now, this is a house they were in just playing as a hangout because they were able to, it was a hot spot. They were able to, use their phones, play video games or what have you in that house. They've been doing it for 2 years. Police knew it for 2 years. But that false report by that white woman led these police to go in there. They didn't follow procedure, and they killed this boy. Then they immediately tried to cover it up by saying he had a gun. This just happened 2 months ago.
Wow.
Yes.
This is right. This is before even Tamir Rice with the BB gun situation up in Cleveland.
Yes.
So that's what they use now. That's their MO, BB guns. I mean, even John Crawford. John Crawford this summer up in Ohio at Walmart. So they try to use the BB guns.
And then they try to demonize him. But see, they couldn't demonize this kid because he was an honor student. That's the first MO, Ron, demonizing what kind of record he had.
Right.
Why were they in his house? Why were they hanging out? They juvenile delinquents. Why were they in there to begin with? It doesn't matter why they were in there. They opened the door to a house. There was no crimes being done other than maybe trespassing. But people in the entire community knew these kids hung out at their house. They weren't doing any illegal activity. They were just being kids, getting away from home and playing video games. But this
actually, the owner of the house said they weren't trespassing because they knew the kids hung there and it didn't bother them, and that there was nothing in the house to even burglarize.
So let me ask you this: but didn't the son that witnessed his brother getting killed, and the 2 other boys that were in there, weren't they all immediately arrested and placed into custody and taken to jail?
Yes, they were.
So what have they been charged with?
They wasn't charged with anything because there was nothing on the scene. There was nothing in their possession, so they had to let them go. So they let those kids go because they didn't have anything to charge them with.
And then to add insult to injury, this boy who was calling for his mother for almost 30 minutes after they had shot him, they would not let his mother. And there was a nurse, I understand, a nurse that was outside that could have given assistance, and that boy stayed in that house lying dead or dying for 30 minutes before even an ambulance got there. So he could have lived. He could have lived.
Yes. We have a volunteer fire department that's 3 minutes away, and we had an ambulance in the area that was 5 minutes away, and he panicked, and he called his superior before he even called for other backup and medical attention. He panicked, basically, and I couldn't even identify Cameron. Cameron didn't have no identification. He was a minor, first of all, and they didn't even let me identify him. I tried to call the coroner. The coroner lied and told me his body wasn't there, that they had brought him to another coroner in a nearby parish, and come to find out that was false.
Let me ask you this as well. I mean, do you know if anything missing off his body? I mean, like organs, people talking about what happened with Kendrick Johnson down in Georgia.
My house key. His house key was missing off of him.
But none of his body parts.
Picture before it happened.
None of his body
parts were there.
Okay. I mean, I just think it's fascinating. I mean, we got to talk more about this because really, like what the brother said earlier, when they killed your son and try to kill your other son, they're killing generations of black people. They are killing out generations of black people. They ain't, it's just crazy that we sit here and don't know what's going on. Like, this is a war. This is a psychological, spiritual, all type of war.
Kid, Ron, this kid watched SpongeBob SquarePants. This was honest. This kid made all A's and B's, gifted program.
Yeah.
This kid is our sacrificial lamb. I mean, nothing taken away from Michael Brown, but Michael Brown, had his issues. They said that Eric Garner was peddling cigarettes. This was an innocent kid. This was a child who got killed at the hands of police, and still America's not even talking about.
Michael Brown was starting college that Monday, so he didn't really have any problems that the media
was falsely reported.
Well, I'm saying in regards to, and I know how tough it was for him to even graduate and the conditions that he graduated in, but when you look at the video, I mean, I'm not talking about somebody who you know, even the thing with the shoplifting thing, but the whole strong arm thing, and he was a big kid, and to buck up to that guy. I've been a journalist for 30 years. You know, I'm not saying anything negative about Michael Brown because he's dead, but what I saw in the video I didn't like.
Well, you know, the thing about it is,
I didn't like.
They put things on the video that suggested that I hit a police officer at my university where I was teaching. Right? They cropped up a fake video. Now, if you go to Canfield and talk to the people there, you'll find out that a lot of things that they're reporting on mainstream media, in which the people in Ferguson are boycotting, are false. Right? Michael Brown was on his way to college. Now, I have a Ph.D. from Howard University. Mm-hmm. I got caught stealing a few times. Right? I got caught stealing when I was a child. Right? I'm just saying, none of our children,
we do stupid stuff on
I don't care if they were on crack. I don't care. They don't have a right to be gunned down like this sister in which we're talking about. None of our kids. And I think this leads back.
I agree 100%.
To the issue of what we're going to do, right? I know that in Atlanta there's a group that's talking about plebiscites, that we form a plebiscite here. But there's something we have to do, right? Because I don't think the current generation of white leaders in this country are going to tolerate a prolonged civil rights movement. They have been preparing for this. It's called the King Alfred Plan for more than 30 years. They're not going to tolerate it. So we have to decide if we are tired of being shot down and killed, and if our women can't have men to procreate with, we have that right. The United Nations says that we have a right to have all of these things. Then we have to make serious decisions that any group would have to make, whether that is looking at returning back to Africa, whether that is forming a plebiscite here in this country. We have to seriously engage in these issues. But we can't keep going through this generation through generation through generation. We can't do this. Or we will be exterminated in 100 years. Because these people are not going to change. They're not. I'm a historian. I have a Ph.D. in U.S. history from Howard University. I'm telling you, they're not going to change. They're not going to change.
I also want to say this in action. Like, we always, you know, when it comes to black people being the victims in this system, it's always blame the victim because we don't control our media. If we don't control the narrative, we can control how people are perceived. So you look at all our great leaders, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, Ida B. Wells Barnett, Frederick Douglass, yada, yada, yada. They all understood the power of perception, of telling your own story. They all formed their own media outlets. And also I want to say this about Emmett Till, because people always say, well, Mike Brown was no saint. He was no Emmett Till. Emmett Till was no Emmett Till either if you go back in time. One of the reasons why no white guy was able to get off was because of how they portrayed Emmett Till. Like, the only way his mom could identify his body was through his father's ring they had on his finger. Emmett Louis Till, or Louis Till. Louis Till was killed. He was hanged during World War II over in Italy. He's buried, I believe, in France. But he was hanged over in during World War II for allegedly raping and killing white women in Italy. I mean, you got to think about it. Black person can't really get no justice in the system. If Bill Cosby can rape 20 white women, how come they going to hang this guy for killing and raping 3 white women? I don't know if it's true or not, but Senator James Eastland, the racist demagogue from Mississippi, the senator from Mississippi, James Eastland, went to classified files from the Pentagon to bring up their information and fed it to the media. Say, look, this guy is no better than his father. Yeah, he might have wolf whistled at that white lady, but tomorrow he would have raped her and killed her. So his father did the same thing, which is very questionable. So this is what they do, but we don't understand our history. A lot of our digital babies are good with this technology. They're very smart. We got to give them their analog history some type of way. You got to feed them their analog history, because what they're doing with the die-ins, I'm following on the streets and they can run over me, that's what they want you to do. They want you to die in their system with no rights. Because we all just Dred Scott right now. We know better than Dred Scott was back in 1855.